if you go back to 2015, which was a different time in American politics, there was major interest in finding some sort of alternative to the burgeoning Trump MAGA onslaught. One conservative wrote a whole book about what he cast at the time as potentially informed conservative alternatives to what he called the reprehensible Donald Trump. A book which advanced his own profile so much that he saw an opening to run for office. And then, as you see in the images on your screen, this individual lived out the very surrender to Trumpism, that reprehensible dogma that he had actually spent all this time in his adult life documenting and fighting against, which is what he wrote about. But he figured out, after doing all that and doing the book, that Trump could help him win what he wanted, which was a Senate seat in Ohio. The story of J.D. Vance is a blatant, embarrassing allegory for the current era of republicanism. Having won that race, now that figure, Senator Vance, is going even further, and that is the news tonight. He's minimizing not only past efforts to steal the election, but also trying to soften the ground as a senator with the power he has from the voters to do it again, basically using the past failed plots that we know about, that we've documented for you, as his baseline to try to publicly normalize and promote potentially ways to do this or something like this again. That tells you two things. One, he knows Republicans might lose again, which is why he's putting the effort on resuscitating this. If you thought you would win lawfully and with the votes, you wouldn't need these kind of plots. And two, as you'll see in the headline, he is seeming in these new remarks to support what is an indicted set of plots to exploit and use false slates of electors.
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there. That is the legitimate way to deal with an election that a lot of folks, including me, think had a lot of problems in 2020. I think that's what we should have done.
Do not be thrown off by the sort of boring, dry-sounding senatorial speak. What he is saying is extreme. If you matched it, if this were a Disney movie, you would see a very scary villain screaming about taking over the empire or whatever it might be. He says what he is advocating there would be, quote, legitimate. But he's actually talking about exploiting elector fraud as a pretext to overthrow the results. That fraud, as you can see here, has been indicted in this country. It is one of the red arrows we have tracked for you. Now, that's one senator, but the entire party is moving towards a formal position against democracy with these kind of tricks. So whether you're tired of this or not is not the question. We have to document this and face it. They used that secret meeting we told you about at the RNC to pass a formal statement backing the lying Trump electors who tried to claim that they represented some sort of result in states that Biden actually won. Now, that statement, I should mention, was even careful to draw the line at the law. So even in doing what I just showed you J.D. Vance is also doing, which is saying, hey, maybe we'll just toss any results that don't support the Republican Party, they go out of their way to also write that that would be for those who lawfully served as Trump electors in states Biden won. Now, these plots are in the open. This is happening. This is now part of electioneering in America. And while we've had many problems in the last several decades, we have not seen people say these kind of things blatantly out in public. We've had voter suppression issues, we've had secret plots, but now this is part of the normalizing. Take Arizona, where there's an actual proposed law now, a bill, that would try to just say we don't honor election results anymore. The politicians will decide. The bill claims the legislature and no other official shall appoint presidential electors. Now, that bill, if it became law, might not be constitutional, I should mention, but this is what's happening out there. The intent is suspect because the Republican behind this bill, we can tell you, actually has already backed coup efforts all the way back to 2020. He joined one of the plots last cycle. This lawmaker was one of the fraudulent electors in Arizona who got busted. That's him on the video there. You can see him signing documents claiming in a state that Biden won that he would make himself a Trump elector and that somehow they would force that issue over to Congress and create enough confusion, doubt, maybe throw in an insurrection or violence and use that as the pretext to end American democracy. Now, that plot's under investigation. The politician here only answered questions with questions when pressed on his role.
Can we talk about whether you knew that that was a lie, that document?
Why do you think it's a lie?
So do you believe that Trump still won in 2020 then?
Why would you think alternate electors are a lie?
Why? The sound of someone who knows that even answering that question with any hint of ballpark accuracy might put him in a lot of hot water. Because not all these people are dumb. The plots may look like they failed, but they failed last time. Whether they fail again or not depends on many things, including society's response and vigilance on behalf of democracy. That politician, we can also tell you, was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He has not been accused, however, of illegally entering. We just know from documented evidence and photos that you see there that he was there. So, why is this the lead story again? Is this an overreaction? Or do we, as a society, need to be as vigilant or more so than the people who are out there doing this, passing resolutions, trying to pass laws, trying to claim these dictatorial potential powers? With former acting Solicitor General for President Obama's administration, Neil Katyal, and Andrew Weissmann, former Mueller prosecutor, General Counsel for the FBI. Both these men have had other legal roles as well. Welcome. Neil, I want to go to you first with the question of, is this overreacting? Is this alarmist? Is this, oh, gosh, everyone's tired of talking about this? Or is it, as I did suggest, although I'll take your view either way, important journalistically, legally, and for society that we really document and expose how much of this is going on, efforts to basically normalize the stealing of future elections?
Ari, I'm so glad that you're talking about this tonight because, you know, at this point, we have a party of democracy and a party of demagoguery. And I think it's exceedingly clear what camp someone like J.D. Vance falls into. And the GOP as a whole is moving in a frightening direction. I mean, if condoning past attempts at election interference, which happened in 2020, and now, as you were reporting, working to pass new laws to enable future interference. If all that's not a threat to democracy, I don't know what is. And our constitutional founders understood that the words in the document aren't going to be enough. Madison called them mere parchment barriers. And what he said, what our founders said more generally, is you need structural checks. You need checks and balances, ambition to counteract ambition. But they didn't understand we would have a political party structure. That people would vote out of party loyalty instead of out of other things. But it still worked pretty well because even with the party structure, you had people like McCain, people like Romney who would vote for what was right, even if it was they put country over party. And that's not true anymore. That's what you're reporting. That's why this is so important, what you're talking about tonight, because this party has now become a party of coup and a party of complicity. And that's a frightening development.
Andrew?
So I was thinking about J.D. Vance's trajectory, as you alluded to, in terms of what got him to the public's attention. I mean, he might as well have called his latest speech American elegy, given the import of what he is saying. This is so anti-democratic. And I should point out, one of the comments that he made was that if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump position, they should just ignore it. In other words, that Donald Trump and the Republican Party will now say what is the law. The Supreme Court is part of our democracy. The Constitution is part of our democracy. The kind of thing that is being espoused is very much a choice for the voters as to where they want to take this country. And I think what you're engaging in now is an incredibly important civics lesson. And it is very hard to talk about this without sounding like it's always, the hyperbole and saying the end is near. But with statements from a sitting senator like the ones that were just made, it's impossible not to go down that road. Yeah, exactly. A sitting senator who, again, is not just genuinely confused, which, as both of our lawyers can tell you, it doesn't always carry the day in court if you're genuinely confused about doing illegal things, but would be a little different than someone who, as we know, documented publicly as an adult recently how much he opposes not only Trumpism, but saw it as a danger. And so we see that, as I called it, an allegory of this time. There's another part of this, Neil, I wanted to ask you about, which is some things in court are complicated and some are not. Sometimes in court, even a smart lawyer or skilled practitioner ends up saying something, answering a question a certain way, and says, it was so bad, you just take it back.
You don't really do a whole big thing. You just say, Judge, we said that, we didn't mean it, I should have put it better. You walk away from it. And I want to point out that Donald Trump has had to do that. And again, I've told viewers, we're very, try to be thoughtful about what we're playing here. But I'm playing this for a reason, which is his statements about the autocratic agenda, if reelected, are so unpopular, even he's in a current Republican primary, let alone the general election, that he's walking them back. And so that seems notable, and I wanted to play this for you. We're basically having, in many ways, conveyed all this, including dictatorial powers, rah, rah, rah. Now he's saying, no, that was just a joke. Take a look.
And I said, I'm going to be a dictator, because he asked me, are you really going to be a dictator? I said, absolutely, I'm going to be a dictator for one day. I didn't say from day one.
Did you
I
mean
said
executive orders? What did that mean, is what I'm saying?
It said very simple. I'm going to close the border, and we're going to drill, baby, drill. That's all. And then after that, I'm not going to be a dictator. Now, that was said in jest.
Quote, that was said in jest, Neil. What do you see there? And does it work for him to convey all these things, which are basically plans, normalize them, and then when pressed for voting purposes, say, well, maybe the stuff that's unpopular was jest?
Yeah, I mean, it's all Trumpian doublespeak. It's what he does. He says something outrageous, then claims to take a little piece of it back and the like. You know, Ari, forget about what he said about being a dictator for one day. Just think about what, as Andrew and I have been talking about for the last few weeks, what he said his lawyers to out in court to say, which is he, as sitting president, can go and murder his political opponent and face no criminal consequences, and, you know, supposedly, you know, murder the senators also who would oversee his impeachment trial. I mean, that's Putin-esque, it's Soviet, it's certainly not American, but that's the kind of power this guy claims. And, you know, you can't just chalk it up to, oh, that was my lawyer, because Trump was asked about whether he stands by it afterwards, and he said absolutely. So, you know, given where he is, you know, smells like a dictator, talks like a dictator, walks like a dictator, he's a dictator.